Whispers of the Forgotten Garden. In a small English village nestled between emerald hills and quiet lakes, there stood a manor once renowned for its gardens. Over time, the flowers faded, the gates rusted, and only memories whispered through the ivy-covered stones. But the soul of that garden lived on, in the heart of a woman named Alara. Alara was a botanist, quiet and thoughtful, with a gaze that always lingered on things others passed by, the gentle bend of a petal, the way morning dew clung to leaves. After inheriting her grandmother's diary, which spoke fondly of the manor's gardens, she decided to move there, determined to bring it back to life. The villagers warned her, "No one's been in that place in years." But Alara smiled and answered, "That's why it needs someone now." She began each morning at dawn, tending to the overgrown paths, speaking to the trees as if they could understand. And though her hands were scratched and her boots worn, something inside her bloomed. The land, slowly, responded. One evening, as the sun dipped low and cast golden light across the ruins of a rose archway, Alara met him, Rowan. He stood by the gate, tall and gentle-eyed, holding an old camera. "I hope I'm not intruding," he said, his voice soft like wine through tall grass. "I used to come here when I was a boy. My mother said this garden was magic." Alara looked at him, her breath catching slightly. "Magic takes time," she replied. "But maybe you can help me find it again." And so, Rowan returned. Day by day, He captured the garden's rebirth through his lens, and in return, Alara began to see herself through his eyes, strong, capable, and quietly beautiful. Under starlit skies, they would sit by the old fountain, trading stories. He told her about the mother he lost, the books he used to read beneath the willow tree. She shared her dreams, her fears, and the way her grandmother believed every flower had a soul. As seasons changed, the garden did too. Color and life returning in bursts of lavender, blush, and gold. The village began to whisper again, not warnings this time, but awe. And in the heart of it all, Alara and Rowan discovered something deeper than friendship. It was love, slow and certain, like the steady growth of roots underground. It bloomed not in grand gestures but in quiet moments, a shared cup of tea, the way Rowan brushed dirt from Alara's cheek, the letters they wrote when he traveled for his photography. One winter evening, as snow gently fell and the garden slept under a soft white blanket, Rowan brought Alara to the restored rose archway. Lanterns flickered around them like stars, and in the hush of the moment, he knelt down, a small velvet box in hand. "I once said this garden was magic," he whispered. "But the truth is, you are." Alara's tears sparkled like frost. "Yes," she breathed, 1,000 times yes. Years passed. The manor thrived. The garden became a haven for lovers, dreamers, and lost souls finding their way again. And at its heart, always hand in hand, were Alara and Rowan, two people who reminded the world that with patience, care, and love, even forgotten places can bloom again. The light between us. In the quiet town of Rose Lake, nestled between rolling hills and a shimmering lake, lived a girl named Alara. She was a florist, known for the way she arranged flowers like she was painting the sky, soft, vibrant, full of feeling. Every morning, she opened her little shop at sunrise, believing that beauty, even in the smallest petals, could bring light to someone's day. Across the lake lived a young man named Orion, a lighthouse keeper who had inherited his father's lonely post. While others saw his job as isolation, Orion saw it as devotion. Every night, he lit the beacon, and every night, he watched the stars alone, writing poems he never showed to anyone. Their worlds were separated by water, but fate has a way of crossing distances. One spring morning, Alara received an envelope with no name, only a pressed white lily inside and a note that read, "To the one whose hands turn blossoms into poetry." She smiled, confused but touched. More letters came. Each had a flower and a line of verse. She hung them on her wall, one by one, wondering who was behind the quiet beauty. Then one rainy evening, while delivering flowers to the lakeside inn, Alara's car broke down. With the roads flooded, the innkeeper suggested she stay the night. As she looked out the window, she saw the lighthouse across the lake glowing steadily in the dark. Something about it made her feel safe. The next morning, she asked the innkeeper who tended the lighthouse. "That'd be Orion. Keeps to himself mostly. Writes a bit, I think. Nice lad, just a bit distant." Curious, Alara asked for a rowboat and crossed the lake. She found Orion on the balcony of the lighthouse, reading a book of poetry. When he saw her, he froze, like she'd stepped out of his dreams. "You're Alara," he said softly, as if her name had lived on his lips for a long time. "And you're the one sending flowers that aren't mine," she replied, smiling. He blushed. "I hoped you'd find me, eventually." That day, they spoke for hours, beneath the lighthouse and the heavy sky. He read her his poems. She told him the stories behind her favorite blooms. It felt like the kind of conversation that didn't start that day, but had waited for them for years. Days turned into weeks. They met by the lake, exchanged flowers and stories, dreams and fears. Orion showed her constellations, and she taught him the language of colors. Slowly, love bloomed like the wild roses near the water's edge, quiet, strong, undeniable. But as summer waned, Alara was offered a chance to move to the city and open a new flower shop. It was everything she'd worked for, everything she'd dreamed. She stood on the dock one night, torn. "I don't want to leave you," she whispered, as Orion held her hand. "You should go," he said, eyes shining like the stars above. You deserve to grow. And what about us? We're not a chapter, he said. We're the whole book. Go, and when you're ready, come back. She kissed him with tears in her eyes and left. Months passed. Letters flew between them, some typed, some handwritten, always sealed with petals. Her shop flourished, her name blooming in the city like her arrangements. Yet, every evening, she looked west, where the lighthouse would be, thinking of the one whose words lit up her world. A year later, she returned to Rose Lake. It was autumn. The lake was calm, the sky golden. She rowed across the water, clutching a bouquet of stargazer lilies and violets, hope and faith. At the top of the lighthouse, Orion stood waiting, holding a lantern. You came back, he said. I never really left, she smiled. You've been the light between every heartbeat. And there, with the wind in their hair and the sky ablaze, they embraced. Not like lovers who had just found each other, but like soulmates who had always known they were meant to return.